Okay, good morning, everyone. This paper was produced based on the MSc dissertation of one of my students, Caroline Valente. This one. Okay, thank you. So the aim of this paper is to propose some guidelines for devising and assessing visual devices in the context of production management in construction. So visual management has been developed in a very intuitive way. So the idea was to make a contribution towards understanding the underlying ideas behind visual management. And in order to do that, we decided to bring knowledge from other fields of knowledge, of research, that have explored similar topics. And one of the concepts that we explore in this research is the idea that visual management needs both visual and non-visual work. One important concept that we've used in this research is the concept of process transparency, which is well known in the Lean community. So this is a very specific concept that comes from the field of operations management. So we found in other fields of knowledge similar concepts like visual perception, which comes from neuroscience, visual communication that comes from social sciences, and visual language that comes from computer science. So these three fields of research have produced some useful concepts, useful ideas that we can use in visual management. Right? I'm not going to explain that map, but we developed some conceptual maps in which we try to connect the concepts from these three fields and, of course, from operations management. So we did a study that it was divided in two stages. The first stage, we did some kind of benchmarking studies in companies from other sectors. These companies are fairly advanced in visual management. You can see some manufacturing companies, but also some companies from other sectors like digital solutions. We also did two studies on leading house building companies in Brazil. I could say that these two companies are well known for implementing Lean very well. Some of them have made presentations. The two of them have made presentations in previous IGLC conferences and other events related to Lean construction. I'm going to show you some examples of visual devices. I don't have time to explain many of them. I chose some of them which I think are very relevant for this investigation. So one of the things we identified in the benchmarking studies is the use of visual devices for supporting rituals in daily meetings. So people stop in front of these visual devices, they have a meeting, they reflect, they discuss. And this is really important because it means that this visual device is adding value. It's supporting decision making, it's perhaps encouraging some kind of innovations to happen in the company. These are other examples of visual environments. The first one in company A, it's a temporary visual device. So they use very cheap materials, right? So they change the shape of the visual device as they are improving the process. And once they find a very successful visual device, so they can adopt that as a standard. But it takes a while for that visual device to become a standard. And in company E, we found many situations in which the visual devices were there to encourage innovation, to encourage creativity. And this is something sometimes we don't pay much attention in construction. This is one very simple quantitative analysis that we did in one of the construction companies, which was very interesting. So we classified the visual devices according to different categories. For instance, 62% of the visual devices were static, and only 38 of them were dynamic, which means that the information is changed from time to time. So these dynamic visual devices are, of course, the most important ones because it provides updated information, it perhaps informs some improvements that have been made, while the static visual devices, they have a very limited role because they are there all the time. People get used to that. It's widely used for safety, health and safety management. Two other interesting points. You see in the first pie on the left that the functions performed by visual devices. There were very few visual devices used for control, right? Which is I think a problem in the visual devices in that company. The other pie shows there are very few visual devices that provide information about why. It's basically what, not why. Try to understand the problems, the causes, and so on. So in this company, we introduced some changes. So the idea was to reduce the number of visual devices, remove some of them which didn't add value, and emphasize and make an effort towards improving the ones that really add value. Another important conclusion that graph shows is that most visual devices were devised by managers or by external sectors external to the construction sites. There are very few visual devices devised by the crews, by the people that work in the construction site itself. And also a large percentage of construction of visual devices is meant to be used by managers, which is okay, it's not bad, but the problem is that there are not enough visual devices for the crews. Some of them hardly used any visual device, or they even didn't understood what the information in the visual devices meant. So we did a small study on a Kanban system. You see the situation before. So that Kanban system, it has pictures, it looks very nice, but it was not very useful because that Kanban was devised for large batches and it didn't have all the information people needed. So Caroline, my student, worked with the company towards developing something with the workers with more detailed information. Perhaps it doesn't look very attractive, but it was devised by them, and the workers became very motivated in terms of using that visual device. These are some examples from the other company, a company from Fortaleza, and we noticed that they used many more visual devices for dynamic visual devices, and several of them were used for control. For instance, this is a line of balance, right? They had the plan, line of balance, the master plan, but they had the actual line of balance, what was happening on site. This is quite big. It takes the whole wall. It's colorful. Everybody could understand. And it was also interesting because this visual device was used for production management, of course, but had not only information about duration, sequence, it had information, for instance, about the customization of units, things that had to be done because the company customized some of the housing units. This is also a very interesting visual device. It was actually produced by the person in charge of customizing the units, an architect that worked for the company. But this visual device was made available to different departments, like the financial department. It was available for the site managers because it had information that was useful for everybody, and it was kept up to date because you need to change lots of information in that type of visual device because the customization of units is something very dynamic. So the role of this visual device is very similar to what we called a boundary object. It's something that you use to, as a means of communicating between different sectors, people that have different aims or targets. So one of the products, one of the outcomes of this project, it's a set of guidelines for devising and assessing visual devices, or I don't like the word visual management system because I think what we have is a production system that uses visual management. So these guidelines could be used for improving production systems that use visual management. So you need to support communication rituals in collaborative meetings, provide timed information and quick feedback so people improve the processes on time, encourage the joint processing of information. So having meetings in front of visual devices is very important. Some visual devices are very good for mitigating problems related to the system complexity. So when you have something complex, you may provide better understanding of the complexity by using a visual device. Emphasize the role of visual devices as boundary objects. Consider the mental models of the users. This is something that is very much investigated, for instance, in the field of neuroscience. Make attractive visual devices that are adequate to the mental models of the people, and contribute to the cultural change in the organization. So you need to change the way you manage processes, for instance, decentralizing decision-making, getting the works involved in producing visual devices, using visual devices, and so on. Thank you.